everyone, it's Silvia. Welcome back to my channel. I just quickly wanted to touch base with you today on the next releases that we can expect in the next 6 months. So I always check every 3 months, I would say, on all the releases, especially when it comes to mass market releases. And I have been really surprised. It is May now, so obviously we will know of all of the decks that are planned, on the schedule for at least until the end of the year. And there's actually one deck that is going to be released in February as well, next year. And as I said, I was really surprised when I was going through the list, because I know that I predicted more indie decks to be picked up and released mass market. At the beginning of the year, I was saying that it seems to become more and more easy for publishers to get access to indie decks. I'm expecting that trend to not just continue, but become even stronger. And I have to say though that the number of decks that have been already, let's say, included in the pipeline is just really astonishing. I sometimes ask myself whether I still find a sense in backing a Kickstarter campaign or in buying a deck in its indie version. And of course the answer is yes, of course it is. Because, well, first of all, for me, it's also a matter of support. I'm supporting the deck's creator, and by giving them our support, I really do believe that we are giving the possibility to this industry to thrive and become even more powerful. But at the end of the day, there's something about publishers, mass market publishers, getting in touch with these indie decks creators and proposing a contract and having their decks being published mass market. They make these decks accessible to all of us, or at least they cover a lot more. Many more countries, for example. In many cases, you will see, especially now, and we know that that is due to the international climate that we are seeing in the last few weeks, obviously due to tariffs and stuff like that. I'm not going to talk about that, because we all know what the climate is. We have already seen the result of that in many cases, especially when shipping is concerned. I have been in touch with a few creators from America, and they just said that for now they're keeping everything on hold. They don't know what's going to happen. It is very interesting what's going to happen in the future, for sure. And I use the word interesting, not to say frustrating, because I completely understand that if you're a deck creator, an indie deck creator, and you're based in the US, knowing that there will be problems in shipping, and also obviously the other way around, if you are based in Australia, if you're based in Europe and you want to ship to America, there's all sorts of problems related to that. One thing that I heard recently was Honasa House. She has just made available her, I think it's the Stunning Tarot edition number 5. I pre-ordered it probably a few days ago, and for the time being she was saying that she doesn't necessarily know whether she will be able to ship her decks to the US. And so I'm wondering, is that issue going to be solved by publishers just coming in and fixing the problem? Just picking on these decks and releasing them mass markets, and then as a consequence of that, obviously solving the shipping issues. I don't know, because I'm not an expert on that. And as a tarot collector and a tarot reader, I have to say that throughout the decades, in many cases, we have seen these problems time and again, not specifically just in the last few months. Trust me, 10 years ago, we would have had probably different problems. During the pandemic, we had different problems related more to logistics, other than the tariffs themselves. But it is interesting. We live in interesting times, and I really strongly believe that there are a lot of possibilities out there for anyone, just anyone with any kind of budget really, to build up a collection that looks and makes you feel really, really happy because it looks really beautiful. So we start with a number of decks that are now new to my wish list. And whilst I was going through the wish list preparing for this video, I was, as I said, really surprised by the number of decks that were considered mass market, expensive, not very easily accessible, that are now going to be distributed. And you can find them on websites such as Amazon, or even in many cases they will be taken into stock by booksellers worldwide, I expect. So many of these decks will be absolutely amazing. I am certain of it, and we have been given the possibility to look at a couple of the cards, not all of them, but that's the way it is. I wish in some cases that we've been given the possibility to look at more cards, but of course it's just limited, and also it gives you an additional layer of surprise, that feeling of not knowing what you get or not knowing all of the cards. In some cases, if we're talking about Insight Edition decks, we always look at them with trepidations because we don't know whether the minors are going to be peepish or not. I have to say that they're doing an excellent job lately, because I have seen the Wizard of Oz, which has been released probably 2-3 weeks ago. I don't have it, at least not yet, but I have to say that it's actually been made with a lot of thought and it looks absolutely stunning. So there is hope for us, for Insight Edition, to finally listen to the tarot community and release these decks with fully scenic minors. So the first deck that I want to talk about is the Green Codex Tarot. They call it Kit because it is a Llewellyn publication, and as always Llewellyn really provides us with amazing guidebooks, or rather companion books. So as we can see here, let's have a look at the cards. And so we've got I really appreciate these kind of aesthetics. It's a limited color palette. Very earthy kind of vibes. I actually really like it, and the cards look absolutely stunning. I really like them. It reminds me a little bit of Eastern Europe kind of aesthetics. A few decks that come from Eastern Europe look like this. And I don't know whether I actually, by the way, this is just my opinion on the decks, and these are first impressions based on my research, but very limited kind of research. What I look for in these decks is first and foremost the publication date, and I'm focusing on all of the decks that will be published in the US. So this is actually based on Amazon US, not on Amazon Australia. So if you're Australian, I usually give you the price in Australian dollars. Today I will not be doing that. The prices that I will show you today are US dollars, so please be aware of that, because obviously there is a currency exchange at play in this case. So these ones are or will be made available, at least, let's say, starting from the second part of the year. I would reckon towards the end of June, or at least starting from the 1st of July. So getting back to the Green Codex Tarot, looks really amazing. It is definitely going in my wish list. I really like this full card. It speaks to me of a very fiery kind of energy. Obviously the head of this person is on fire, and I find it quite whimsical as well, the way there are these holes on the ground, and the fact that they're holding bells, and it makes me think about the way in which when we start a new adventure, we're not necessarily sure about the path that we're going to take, and it's going to be surprising, it's going to be amazing, and sometimes we probably have to stop and get back and choose a different path, because that's what the hero does in their journey. So moving on, we've got the Empress card, absolutely gorgeous. I really like the flowery or plant related vibes to this card, and the Wheel of Fortune, and the Moon card, very evocative, I would say. Of course, there is something related to minimalism that we can see in these illustrations, but I also like the fact that we've got all of the zodiac signs in the dress of the character depicted on the moon card. And then we got the Ace of Pentacles, and unfortunately we don't really have, this is the back of the card, so we don't have access to what the minors will look like. Being it a Llewellyn release, I don't think that there will be peepish, or at least I hope they won't be. And so let's have a look at another deck on my wish list. So this is the Tarot Chimera, and the release date so far, as we can see, is February 2nd, 2026. So this deck is actually going to be released next year. But I wanted to bring your attention to this because it is a deck that has been, well, originally it was published independently. So it is a deck that is based on Odilon Redon's artwork. There's a couple of decks that have been based on Odilon's artwork, and all of them are absolutely amazing. We're talking about Oracle decks and also Tarot decks. Personally, I find this one incredibly intriguing. We don't have the artwork, we just have, as you can see, the probably the face of the tarot of the box itself. It does say that it will be priced at $29.95, and it is by Natasha Roland. I really like this in the sense that this is one of the decks that really makes me say it will be easier, it will get easier in the future, or at least this is the current trend, that it makes it easier for many more of us, if not all of us, who have access obviously to Amazon, for example, and other online retailers, to get access to these decks. The price obviously being $30 US, I'm expecting it to be around 45 or 50 Australian dollars, and obviously you need to convert it into your own currency. But it will be definitely much less of the price we had to pay for this deck if we wanted to buy it when it was still indie. And so this confirms what my predictions were. But I'm actually very excited by this. Are they going to publish even other decks that were published with the artwork by Odilon Redon? And I'm thinking about the Lonely Dreamer, for example. That is a stunning, stunning deck. And I know that now it has been reprinted, I believe, 3 times. I believe that the last one was also a Kickstarter, perhaps the previous ones as well. I'm not entirely sure. But I also know that whenever that deck goes into out of print, let's say, it becomes very expensive if you want to grab a copy. So the fact that the Tarot Chimera will become mass market, does that mean that Wiser Book is also going to publish the other decks that have been inspired or also using the curated work by Odilon Redon? We don't know yet, but that really opens up a whole new world of possibilities. And the next one on my list is the Grim Tales Tarot by Fiona Edgewood. This one has a release date for the 8th of October this year, right on time for Halloween. And yes, it is one of those decks that really catches my attention because it is a little bit grim, as the title says. I really love this type of decks. There's a lot that goes into let's say creating a deck that is in theme with Halloween, and so with darker themes obviously, but at the same time it needs to show you the intention of the creator. So it's not enough to just take a pumpkin and use the pumpkin in the suit of pentacles simply because it's round. There needs to be intention behind these creations. So let's have a look at the cards. So what we can see here, it looks really interesting, very intriguing, kind of surrealist in the style, if I may say. And look at this card, really, really beautiful. And we'll have a companion book as well, as we always like, or at least I personally always prefer it. This looks like it's the 2 of coins or pentacles. And then this is the full cards, and I really, really like this one. I really feel like it will pair up really nicely with a lot of Oracle decks that have that kind of whimsical aspect to them. Whimsical, but at the same time also surreal. And so I'm thinking about, for example, an older Oracle deck, the Oracle of the Mystical Moments. that is one staple of an oracle deck. Absolutely fantastic for that type of art style. Obviously, if you vibe with that art style, I think you will like this deck as well. If you don't, obviously it's always personal. We got the Ace of Swords, and it looks really in theme with Alice in Wonderland a little bit as well, which is always intriguing. And the High Priestess, really beautiful with this pomegranate, for example, and the vibes and the snake, you know, around her chest and neck. Very, very intriguing. This is the Ace of Pentacles. I love the fact that we see all the scars on the hand. And these are the bags, which somehow remind me of the chipmunks in The Wizard of Oz, somehow, because they look like monkeys with wings, so I could be wrong. But in any case, so this one is absolutely in my list, in my wish list. Really beautiful deck. Cannot wait also to see a couple of things about, you know, the cardstock. Perhaps it will be, I'm expecting it to be a glossy cardstock, I don't know. It is a Llewellyn deck again, so we can expect really great things. So the next deck that I want to bring your attention to has a release date for the 30th of September this year, and it will be released by Rockpool, so I'm expecting that to be the same date of release in Australia. Rockpool is an Australian company, and this is a deck that really grabs my attention because it is by Syrian Shadow. Syrian Shadow started with a few decks that were actually released, I believe, indie originally, or even through a Kickstarter campaign. I have one of their decks. There is one deck that everyone is absolutely frantic to get their hands on it. It's called the Haunted Manor Oracle, I believe it's called. Apologies if I'm wrong. I really believe that it's called the Haunted Manor, although I'm not entirely sure whether it's an oracle deck or a tarot deck. In any case, I really appreciated that Syrian Shadow has then started to collaborate with Rockpool, because Rockpool is picking up their decks. And I really think that when they do that, they actually give you the safety, the peace of mind of knowing that the decks will be really well made, the production will be absolutely fantastic, the guidebook, everything related to the deck, the box, I'm expecting it to be the usual box, the guidebook, etc. When it comes to, there's a couple of things that I had to say about Syrian Shadow's decks. They are fantastic and I really love them. I do find it though that sometimes in the very first edition of the deck, one of their oracle decks, I believe maybe the cards were a little bit darker than what I would have liked. When then that oracle deck was picked up mass market and released by Rockpool, they did something to the cards. They probably tweaked on the sliders of the exposure or brilliance or white balance. I don't know what they've done, but the result of that was absolutely stunning. So I am really curious to see about this deck now. So we've been given quite a few cards and also a bit of a preview on what the guidebook will look like, so that is going to be really exciting. So as you can see, it's a very dark kind of style, which is again in theme for Halloween, which it means that this year's Halloween is going to be really, really cool. And as always, I will be making videos always based on Halloween vibes for the whole month of October, and I cannot wait. And so we've got a few of these cards. Wow, this stack card is really powerful, also haunting, and I would say I like the fact that we've got at the top, we got the name or the title of the card, but then at the bottom we also have a couple of keywords as lost and directionless. And impaled with release and navigation, multitasking with prioritization and facing adversity, fortitude with self-control and regulation, cultivate with fostering growth, continued progress, really interesting, value with deserving and worthiness, that's a really beautiful one, And just to have a little bit of a sneak preview of the guidebook that will contain, as you can see here, also some spreads: Face the Darkness spread, Through the Darkness spread, and just protection card. Maybe the cards will be divided in categories, so we can expect that. And as always, you know, it will be really nicely done. So as we can see here, for example, for the card number 1 as Stuck, we got the keywords lost, directionless. What or who is keeping you stuck? Living authentically is what gives life meaning. Be aware of your value and remember to lean into what is important and live honestly and fully. And then we got a description. So really excited with this one as well. And again, Wiser Book is coming to the lighthouse with a new deck that will be published on the 7th of July with a price again of $29.95. This is called the Visionary Woman Tarot by Christine Gorman, but there's also a foreword by Bybee Wen. So I'm really intrigued by that because I personally really admire Bybee. She's an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to many themes related to the occult. So let's have a look at the cards. This is in my wish list, but to be honest with you, it's not necessarily what I would normally consider my style, but I still consider it very interesting. And what I appreciate about this deck is the fact that we can see that the colors are very brilliant, very saturated, and I generally like that. So this is the full card. I think I've seen Rachel, our beloved Rachel, in one of the cards as well. This is the Magician. Let's move on. The Empress, very powerful. And yes, that's it, that's Rachel. I really like this card, and I really love the fact that they chose her to represent the World card. That is absolutely amazing. And then we got the Lovers and the Eight of Swords. So that we can see already that it will be fully scenic. Very interesting to check this one out when it will be released. Another deck that went straight to my wish list as soon as I saw it is a deck that has been realized and produced by Amanda Lovelace. We know Amanda from the Cozy Witch Tarot, which I personally really like. After a period of time in which I did not want to buy that deck because I was seeing it portrayed in many YouTube channels and Instagram and you name it. And I was thinking by looking at the cards that the protagonist on the cards could be my children. The age, let's say, of the characters on the cards is very young, and so as a consequence of that, I was kind of hesitating. I was thinking maybe this deck is not necessarily for me. I don't really know whether I'm going to resonate or not with that. But then it just so happened that it was for sale and it was very affordable, and I just convinced myself to click on the buy button. And when I received it, let me tell you, that was absolutely amazing. I really love that deck, especially because of, let's say, the bridge that is built between the images on the cards themselves, the meaning of the cards that they're portraying, but also the messages at the bottom of the cards. I think it's really well done. I think Amanda is a fantastic writer, and I am actually really excited about this one. This is called the Chubby Witch's Night In, which is really cool. And this one again, the release date is September 9th. So let's have a look at some other cards. And so again, it's the same publisher, I believe. Yes, Andrews Macmillan. And so let's have a look. So A Witch Alone, Not a Lonely Witch. Really beautiful. Absolutely love this. I love the aesthetics of it as well, and I love the choice on the color palette. If you remember, the Cozy Witch had more of a maroon kind of predominant color in the color palette. This one seems to be more centered and focused on purple tones, which is really cool. And be prepared for anything. And dance party time. And then we do have a couple of pages from the guidebook, which is always nice to check out, you know, because you just want to know also when it comes to the additional information that is offered to you on the guidebook, is it going to resonate or not? And so for this one in specific, that's card number 2. It says be critical of stories, and then you know it goes on and says we tell And we all tell ourselves stories. Some of them are beautiful, like telling ourselves we can achieve anything we want, to if we just put in the work, etc. And then there is a 19 journal prompt. So this is obviously the Chubby, which is 19, an oracle deck. And so it gives you the possibility to do some meditation or also some journaling work, which is always absolutely welcome. And then at the end, I can also see there's something called magical tip. Dabble in a little tech magic, play a life sim game, and through your character, work towards your real life goals. Don't stop there, though. Use this as inspiration to get out there and take the steps necessary to make them materialize. This is really interesting, and I really now am excited about this deck. Now, when it comes to Lo Scarabeo, to be honest, I haven't seen a lot of new releases for the second part of the year, which worries me a little bit because we have everything coming out from Llewellyn, we have a few coming out from US Games, and that doesn't necessarily mean that Lo Scarabeo is not going to keep up with the other publishers. It just so means that perhaps they don't have the products in the pipeline or they haven't released it yet. But this one is indeed from Lo Scarabeo, even though it does say Llewellyn. Llewellyn, I believe, has the distribution of Lo Scarabeo decks in the US, and so that's why it looks like it's coming from Llewellyn. Now, having a look at the card, I don't think I can expand on them. But in any case, it looks really beautiful. It's called the Wild Eden Tarot by Gloria Pizzilli and Alice Mastroleo. Really interesting. It looks like it's very earthy as well. There's more than one deck in this list, I believe, that has more earthy vibes than anything else. And I really like this Chariot card. Absolutely find it really gorgeous. There is a sense of really strong power coming out of it. Very potent. There is a sense of movement as well, which I appreciate. And then we got the Staka, which is absolutely stunning. May I just say, really absolutely gorgeous. And then we've got the back of the cards. This will be interesting, but I will probably reserve some time to check this deck out whenever it will be released. It says here 8th of October 2025, so this year, obviously still on time for Halloween, but it will be interesting to see what they do when it comes to distribution. I don't know whether Lo Scarabeo will send it over to Australia or if I will have to buy directly from Italy, like I did last year for the Spirit Box and the Yokai Tarot. When I am very motivated, then I can bite the bullet and pay the shipping cost, but it needs to be a really amazing deck. This one so far I haven't seen enough, but it is in my wish list. The next deck that I want to bring to your attention, I've actually talked about this deck before because we knew that it was going to be released a couple of months ago, but it will be released in the second part of the year. It says here July 22nd, 2025, and it will be released by Hay House. Now, this is a deck, it's called the Mindscapes Tarot by John A. Rice. If you remember when I talked about this deck, a lot of you were commenting that we're very careful to buy this deck because we don't necessarily know whether the minors will be peepish or not. Originally, and that's the reason why we're hesitating, originally the indie deck that was priced at, I believe, 185 Australian dollars because it came with a fantastic guidebook that was more like a coffee table book. This one, when it was announced to be released mass market, it did not necessarily say whether the minors will be fully cynic or not. I believe that now we can actually have a look at that, but let's pay attention to the cards for now. So we've got the full card. We've got a number 22 on the major arcanas, which is obviously, I don't have the original indie, so I don't know which card this is referring to. Obviously, if we start with the full and number 0, the world card, which is the last of the usual major arcana, is number 21. So number 22 is obviously going to be an additional card, which is always welcome. I always like to see additional cards because I believe that in those cards, you really see the intention of the creator more than in the usual ones. So this is the 5 of Stones. So obviously we now have the possibility to look at a minor. And it is fully cynic. It is fully cynic. So I'm thinking 5 of Stones is probably the 5 of Pentacles. So a renaming from Pentacles to Stones. And it makes sense because it looks like there is a character here which is pushing away or banishing or sending away someone, and that will correspond to what we normally see in the traditional RWS for the Five of Pentacles. And then we got the Page of Tides, so I'm expecting tides to be related to the element of water, so the renaming for the Suit of Cups. And this is being, the page is obviously referring to the court cards, again, I believe fully scenic. We see some castle in the sand here, if I'm correct, at the bottom left of the card. And then we got, there you go, so now my curiosity finally found an answer. So the number 22 of the Major Arcana is called the Catacomb. If you are going to Rome, do not skip on the La Cripta dei Cappuccini, so the Capuchin's crypt, basically, which is not situated in the catacombs, is actually aside from that. It's in Via Veneto, I believe. I've been there a year and a half ago, when I was there last, and it's absolutely fantastic. It actually looks like this card. I don't know whether the creator took some inspiration by visiting this place. It is a crypt that is literally decorated. It's got several different chambers, and all of these chambers are decorated with actual human bones. More often than not, we're talking about skulls, but there's bones of every kind. It is incredibly powerful to go there. The environment really exudes the sense of time. There's an inscription at when you enter the crypt, and it says, we are now what you will be, and we were once what you are now. I am just loosely translated from Latin, and I'm doing a really terrible job, but basically it's saying, don't be too sure of yourself or of your looks, because you are made of bones and you will return to be bones at the end of your life. So it is very, very interesting, very powerful place. Really, really highly recommend it in Rome. Moving on to the next card, so we got the Tower, which is really, really beautiful, very fairy tale like, if I may say, and the High Priestess, very evocative as well, with this tent that looks like it's part of a circus, for example. And the King of Stones, again, we've been given a bit of a glimpse on the minors, even though this is a court card. But I believe that, looking back at the Five of Stones, I really do believe that we can expect the minors to be fully scenic. And I believe that also, if you open up on the description of the deck here and on the website that I'm looking at, which is from Amazon.com, it says that with the traditional suits renamed to reflect the changing panoramas they feature, the minor arcana is made up of branches for wands, tides for cups, spires for swords, and stones for pentacles. Each card from Ace through 10 depicts the same scene through the seasons and years, the same place in times of plenty and times of luck. I don't necessarily know what this means, because going back to the Five of Stones, as we can see here, if they had at least shown either other fives in other suits, then we could have known what that means. Each card depicts the same scene through the seasons and years, so possibly we can see that the Four of Stones is depicting the same scene in a different year. I don't really know. If you have any idea, this will be released at the end of July, so I think that they're creating even more vibe around this deck, because, as I said at the beginning, we didn't even know whether we were going to look at the deck with me and minors that were scenic, fully scenics, or peepish. It looks like they might be scenic, but they might have, or they might present a slightly different kind of artwork. And this is not a tarot deck, it's a book. But I really wanted to bring your attention to this because I am incredibly excited about this. This is called Become an Exceptional Tarot Reader, the card meanings and skills you need to ace every reading. And this is by Anthony Don, our lovely Anthony, and Theresa Reed, with a foreword by Theresa Reed. I really cannot wait to read this book. It says here it's a culmination of Anthony's 20 plus years teaching tarot. This book takes you through each step of becoming a confident, successful tarot reader. This will be released, though it says release date on the 8th of December 2025, so we will probably have to wait even longer here in Australia, but perhaps it will be available on Kindle, perhaps it will be available on Audible. I have absolutely no idea, but it will be very, very interesting, and it will be published by Llewellyn. And if you are a fan of the TV show The Outlander, which I am, I'm starting to watch it because I think it looks really interesting. There is this deck coming out in July 15. So this is the Outlander Oracle 54 cards. So that's what we like. We like more than 44 cards. Thank you so much. This will be published by Random House Worlds. And I think that it says here, drawing on Outlander's universal themes of love, loss and fate. But there's a few characters such as Jamie and Claire as the lovers, Brianna as the artificer, and Gaylis as the seductress, as well as attribute cards that call out traits like healing, sacrifice and transformation. It is very intriguing, very interesting, so I am very excited about this deck. Let's just have a look at a couple of these images. The caregiver. I really like the tones. I really like the decorations on the borders. As you can see, I'm expecting these to be foil. I'm not entirely sure because I can't really see from these images, but I think it's very possible. And the tones are towards colder tones, so a really bluish kind of tint, which is very evocative, and it really feels like it matches the evocative tone of the TV show itself. As you can see here, the lovers, the journey, the wanderer. It feels more like, if I may say, an archetypal kind of oracle. So when we're looking at these cards, for example, the lovers, the journey, the wanderer, it feels like these are titles of archetypes and not necessarily to be used as keywords. I don't really mind. What I do mind when there's a keyword that is just reflecting exactly what's in the card. So if it's a card representing an apple and the title being an apple and it doesn't necessarily give me any other information about it, that is where let's say that's what a deal breaker for me, because I need additional information on the card. And whilst we can hope that there will be additional information in the guidebook, when it comes to decks like these, it's actually slightly easier to use them, because if these are indeed referring to archetypes, then I already know how to talk about it. So obviously the Wanderer, I will probably think about the Fool and the hero's journey and the fact that we need to just go and expand our horizon, but at the same time, when we don't have a fixed path, we will be challenged to see every now and then whether we are doing the right thing and something like that. So it's always very interesting, but I do really like it. I think it's absolutely stunning for the images that I can see now, and I cannot wait to get this deck. And the next deck is another deck that was originally an indie deck. It's the Lubanko Tarot by Emily Lubanko. This deck will be picked up and released mass market by Llewellyn. It doesn't necessarily have a release date, but it says here free delivery on Wednesday the 8th of October, so that's what we can expect. I believe that we can probably expect this deck to be on time for Halloween, at least if you live in North America. I have to say that this deck, when it was an indie deck, it went out of print a couple of times. I think that it was incredibly powerful. I have it. I have the indie edition. I don't use it. I don't think that it's one of those decks that I can use or that I feel like using for divination for any of my clients, for example, and any of my members. And the reason behind that is because admittedly there's a couple of cards that to me feel like they are very, very intimate. They really challenge you on a very deep level, and they may not be suitable for everyone. And please understand, I'm not saying anything negative with this. What I'm saying is that there's a very personal view on the relationship that we as human beings have with cards such as the Devil, for example, or the Lovers card. They are very strong, very impactful, and for some people, for some of us, it's totally normal to consider those cards as probably a little bit triggering, a little bit confrontational, and that is totally fine. What I'm thinking is, I'm just wondering whether, because it's going to be released mass market, does that mean that we can expect some changes in the card? Because if you remember, we talked about, for example, the Desert Illuminations Tarot. Now, when it's been released mass market, they based the cards on the second edition of the indie deck. And in other cases, for example, when a mass market publisher picks up an indie deck for mass market publication, they do ask the creators to apply a few changes. So I'm just wondering, and I don't think that we can see that in these cards. So let me just look at this. And so this is the box. Obviously, this is the full card, and it looks exactly like the full card in the original deck. But then again, this was not one of those 2 or 3 cards that were kind of, let's say, strong from the original indie deck. This is the High Priestess. I have to say, from the indie deck, which I don't know whether it will be reflected also on the mass market deck, but this deck has got one of my favorite suit of pentacles of all times. It is absolutely gorgeous. The color palette used, the graphics, the artwork, it's absolutely stunning. And then we're looking at the Empress, which is such an amazing card. I really love this. I don't recall whether this is the same as the indie deck, but I believe it is. I should have checked earlier. Apologies for that. The Emperor is indeed the same, and it's just really amazing, absolutely fantastic. This Emperor conveys such a sense of authority, but at the same time, because it does depict an elderly person, it also tells me about experience. And yes, of course, it does remind me of Odin because of the 2 crows on the shoulders. Let's see, this is the Hierophant, very powerful Hierophant, absolutely mesmerized by the fact that there is this mask that has been moved aside to show you the true face of the Hierophant, that has, you know, 4 hands, 4 arms, actually more than that, there's a 5th one here. Really excited by this one. The backs are also, no, the backs are slightly different if I remember correctly, but it doesn't really bother me. But that makes me think that maybe we're going to see a different Lovers card and also different Devils card. I'm not entirely sure, but I am very excited about this deck. And I'm also really excited to keep the indie deck. I will not part ways with the indie deck, because even if the cards of the mass market will be exactly the same, I will definitely keep it. It's one of those decks that it took me a while to get acquainted to it because of those 3 cards. But at the end of the day, the journey that I went in to see myself reflected in those cards is very meaningful to me, and I really want to keep that deck as a keepsake of that. So another couple of decks. I am so excited about this Oracle deck. It's called the Yokai Oracle deck, Wisdom and Guidance for the Spirit of Japan. This is going to be published by Adams Media. The release date is the 25th of November, and the price is only $20 US, which is incredibly affordable. This is by Tersa Matsura and Michelle Wang. And let me just open up the images here, because that is the reason why I'm so excited, because I have other Oracle decks based on yokai. So if you're not familiar with yokai, they are part of Japanese folklore, and they are the spirits. In many cases, they are supernatural beings and spirits that populate the stories, the mythological stories of Japanese lore. I personally really find it intriguing and fascinating. I always find lore, folklore fascinating from any country of the world. I have a lot of books about folklore from different countries. I love reading those stories. But when it comes to Japan, there is such a strong sense of pathos, of piety. There is a strong sense of compassion as well, even though we're looking more often than not at spirits that actually represent something negative, something let's say malign, something that is against humans. And even when you think about yokai such as the tanuki, which is supposed to be whimsical, sometimes they actually act against human beings. And the keyring, for example, is the dragon, and that one is actually really good fortune, very, very positive if you see one. But in many cases you will see that they always resonate. I think that in many cases those yokais, those myths are the production of human psyche when we have to face something incredibly painful, incredibly powerful, and also incredibly sad, like the tragedies of losing a man at sea. And so, you know, the myth goes that all of the people that we lost at sea was because of a yokai. That was obviously a storm or a squall, and it was bringing down a ship, it was sinking the ships, and obviously all of the men were dying. And so because we want to be able to face and comprehend and try and understand why these things happen, the human psyche forms these ideas of something that is unknown to us, and so we call it the supernatural. And I believe that even though that is at the basis of all of the different countries' folklores, but when it comes to the Japanese lore, you can really feel that whenever you look at all of these hundreds of different yokais. And I do have a lot of decks, especially an oracle deck, which is called the Oracle de Camille Yokai because it's in French. But even though it does have the name of the yokai, it doesn't have keywords for it on the cards. And so that makes it slightly more difficult to use, but this one has keywords, and I'm so very excited about this deck. So you can see here, it doesn't just give you the Japanese name, so the Ftakuchionna, but it translates that, so it's called the two-mouthed woman, and it gives you also the keywords, so duality, hidden motives, and deception. So that will be incredibly interesting, and I have to say, I actually also like the aesthetics. They look absolutely stunning. I really love them. Obviously, we're talking about the kitsune, the foxes, with cleverness, foresight, and adaptability. One thing that will be interesting for me will be to see whether my idea of the yokais that I already know and assign the keyword to will correspond with the keywords that they propose on the cards. That will be very interesting for me. And then another card that we have here is the Zashki Varashi, house spirits or Pala, children, good fortune, connections, household harmony. Really excited about this deck, I cannot wait. And another one that I'm very excited about, and we've talked about this, I believe, a couple of months ago, but we did not have a lot of images available, and I'm happy to say we now have at least 3, so that's already better than nothing. This is the Agatha Allong Tarot deck, so it's a tarot deck by Andrea Hanna, and the illustrator is Brittany Horn. This will be released by Insight Editions, so again I am really scared but also hopeful to see if we can know what the minors will look like. The release date is the 8th of July. I don't know if you follow the TV show Agatha All Along. I personally think that I believe I've given it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. And the reason why it's not a 4 or even higher is because I think that in some places it was a little bit repetitive. But it was very powerful. I really loved it. The song that they sing in order to open the portal was absolutely fantastic. I liked it. I really think that it was also a bit of a dare to release a TV show like that. I believe it was released by Disney, if I'm not wrong, or at least that's where I watched it. I watched it on Disney Plus streaming. And I believe that it was a bit of a dare because obviously they have to be aware that they target a younger audience. But you know, lately obviously they've been releasing a lot of TV shows and movies. If you think about the Avengers, those are definitely not targeting a younger audience. So obviously they are probably open themselves up to the possibility of looking into these kind of movies as well and TV shows as well. And let's not forget that the Hocus Pocus movies, which are absolutely two of my favorites, were indeed released by Disney. So let's have a look at the cards. And as I said, I don't think we can know whether the minors will be peepish or not. We can only keep our fingers crossed. This is the Death card. It does say something that really worries me because it says here on the top right corner, it says not final. And so I'm just thinking, okay, so whether there were problems in the release of this deck, or maybe they haven't finalized all of the cards yet, but why showing us then? Because it does have a release date of July, and July is not at the end of the year. July is just in a couple of months, guys. So when it comes to these kind of things, when you look at the timeline for publishing, 2 months is nothing. If they don't have the final cards for the Death card, which is a major, I'm kind of worried that they might actually have to postpone the release. I don't know. Obviously, I have no idea, but this is probably my worry. So we're looking at the Tower card as well. Very RWS. It feels very WS, this card at least. And then we got another card, and okay, so we've got a Three of Swords, so we got a minor, and I have to say this is fully scenic, even though they, out of all of the minors they could have chosen to show us, they've chosen the Three of Swords, which is ironically not my favorite card. As a matter of fact, it's probably the least favorite card out of all. Let's say that also the Eight of Wands is not necessarily one of my favorite cards, not because of the meaning of the card, but because of the fact that it's not challenging your creativity, let's say, if you follow the traditional RWS. So the Three of Swords with the pierced heart is not necessarily my favorite, but then again we can see, I believe this is obviously Agatha. If you have followed the TV show, you will probably know also what moment in the TV show this is referring to. I think I do recognize it. And it is definitely bringing with it the sense of having the loss that she has incurred, and the sense of having lost everything, and the heartbreak that comes with that. So we'll see. It's really interesting. But then again, I see something else here, and it says not final again, but these are the backs. So I have absolutely no idea what they're going to do with this. But as I said, the release date here is the 8th of July, which is literally in 2 months. So I don't know what they're going to change. I hope that they will not postpone it. I'm very excited about this deck, and I'm also I'm also really rooting for Insight Editions. I really want them to follow what the heart says, you know, in the tarot community. We love tarot decks. We love them to be fully scenics, even the minors. And I do believe that they're going in that direction, but I'm very scared that there's still going to be a few decks that are going to come out half and half, if you know what I mean. Like, for example, the Ghostbusters Tarot was a really major letdown for me because some of the cards were fully scenics, and then other cards in the minors were just completely peepish and repetitive, you know, if that wasn't enough. So I don't know, we'll see. We keep our fingers crossed, as I said. Very excited about this one as well. So this is where I wanted to leave you, but I just wanted to leave you with a question. So having seen that it is becoming more and more popular for mass market publishers to look at indie decks and pick them up and release them mass market, what I'm wondering is there still a sense, is there still a will for tarot collectors to back a Kickstarter campaign, or to buy an indie deck and spending probably 3-4 times as much as we would spend on a mass market deck if we know that it's going to be published mass market? I do believe that some publishers do apply slight differences to the card when it comes to the artwork, perhaps, or even to the guidebook. I don't know. We have seen that happening in a few decks, as I said, I was mentioning earlier the Desert Illuminations Tarot based on the second edition. But it will be interesting for me to know your opinion. Let me know what you think, because personally, I found myself last year backing an incredibly high number of Kickstarter campaigns, and this year I'm just not finding, not that there aren't, because there's a lot of Kickstarter campaigns, but I don't feel like picking them up. I don't feel like backing them, because the costs are going up, and obviously we're looking into shipping costs that are becoming more and more prohibitive. And so I'm thinking to myself, maybe there's enough decks coming out of the mass market part of the industry already to keep me busy for the second part of the year. So in any case, let me know, because I'm always curious. I haven't decided either way. And truth be told, I am someone that when I look at a Kickstarter campaign and I really like the deck, or I really want to support the creator, I just back it. It's not, I don't even think twice about it. But having seen, decks such as the Mindscapes Tarot that used to sell for 185 Australian dollars, and it was a majors only, now selling for $30, it really makes me think, if this is the future, does it still make sense to spend $185 on the indie deck? Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye!